I still recall that chilling night from a few years ago when I was behind the wheel for Costco. It was the season of festivities, and we were delivering an extra batch of colossal Spider-Man dolls to different spots. A last-minute call came through, urging me to rush to our store in rural Kentucky. They knew me as a swift driver, so I got the task even though it was late. After loading up the truck, I hit the road on Route 265. Around 3 a.m., an uncanny sensation started to grip me. I thought it was just exhaustion, so I gulped down a couple of no-dose pills. Roughly 15 minutes later, an unusually dense fog began to envelop the road. It was thicker than any fog I had encountered before or since. I chose to pull over and wait it out. No other vehicles were in sight, and I was ahead of schedule, so I decided to sit tight until the fog lessened. For approximately 5 minutes, I remained still in the silence, when suddenly, my truck's engine died. Everything went dark, the lights, the engine, just complete silence. I attempted to use the CB radio, but all I got was silence on the other end. I glanced at my cell phone, hoping for a signal, but it too failed me. Sitting there, wondering about my next move, I heard what resembled the sound of a weeping child. Gradually, the crying seemed to shift into the sound of a woman's sobs, or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Despite being a large man, standing at 6'3" and weighing 250 pounds, I couldn't muster the courage to step out of the safety of my cab. I reluctantly rolled down the window and called out if anyone needed assistance. Oddly, the crying ceased at that moment. It was then that I heard what I can only describe as a malevolent laugh. It felt as if this laugh was aimed directly at me. I hastily rolled up my window, and the more my fear escalated, the louder the laughter seemed to grow. Just as suddenly as it started, the laughter ceased. Astonishingly, my truck's engine roared back to life, and the fog dispersed as if it was never there. I didn't waste any time. I drove away from that place as if all the demons of hell were chasing me. Finally, reaching the next truck stop, I hurried into the restroom, splashed water on my face, and questioned the reality, what I had experienced that night. Driving through the darkness of Montana, headed east, my company had made a mistake with my mileage. I urgently needed gas, so I got directions to the nearest station I could use. It was quite a distance away, not close at all. I turned off the main road and headed toward the suggested stop. The night was pitch black, with no moon or city lights. It had been over an hour since I saw any headlights. I kept driving down the highway, my headlights stretching as far as they could, when I spotted something in the middle of the road ahead. I instinctively slowed down as I got closer. As I passed by it, I managed to get a good look, and I hit the brakes in shock. Right in the middle of the road, I couldn't believe my eyes. I decided to reverse and check it out. In my rearview mirror, I saw its eerie red shape illuminated by my brake lights. I stopped, put on my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped out of my truck. Walking cautiously to the back of my trailer, I shone the light on the object. It was a headless, skinless, and mangled body. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to comprehend what I was witnessing. There, in the freezing stillness of the night, the only sound was the rumble of my truck behind me, and I saw steam rising from the grotesque heap. There was no fur, no clothes, just a whole rib cage tangled up with other bones and ligaments. My mind raced and I considered calling the police, but my phone showed no signal, and the closest town was around 50 miles away. I put my phone away and scanned the surroundings with my flashlight. At the far end of the road, a group of coyotes stood staring at me. Then they began to move through the fence, approaching me. Instinctively, I knew it was time to retreat. I hurried back into the truck and continued on my way. To this day, I'm unsure whether what I saw was human or not. Whatever it was, I felt like I had narrowly missed being a witness to something unspeakable. I managed to convince myself that it was probably a deer, hit by a truck like mine at high speed. That could explain the shocking state of remains. But looking back, I've never seen a roadkill so devoid of its flesh before. It was a dark and stormy night, and I was driving home from my late shift at the hospital. I had worked a long day, and all I could think about was getting home to my warm bed. But as I drove through the winding roads of the countryside, I realized that something was not right. The rain was coming down in sheets, making it hard to see the road ahead. And then I noticed something in the distance. It was a car, parked on the side of the road with its hazard lights flashing. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to pull over to see if the driver needed help. As I approached the car, I saw a man sitting behind the wheel, his face obscured by the darkness. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. I knocked on the window, but he didn't move. A feeling of unease began to settle in me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Just then, I noticed a piece of paper on the passenger seat. I reached in and picked it up, and as I read it, my heart began to race. It was a note, written in a shaky hand, that read, "Help me. He's coming back." My mind began to race as I realized the gravity of the situation. I looked up, saw a figure emerging from the darkness, moving towards me with a menacing stride. I jumped back into my car and slammed the door shut, locking it just in time. As I drove away, my heart pounded in my chest. I saw the man chasing me in his car, his face twisted in a grotesque snarl. I drove faster and faster until finally, I lost him in the darkness. When I arrived home, I called the police and reported what had happened. They searched the area. They never found the man or the car. I never forgot that night, and I always wondered what might have happened if I had stopped to help the man on the side of the road. From that day on, I became more cautious, more wary of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. I knew that I had narrowly escaped a terrifying ordeal, and I would never forget the fear, the uncertainty that had gripped me that stormy night.